That's irrelevant. I see that question being asked in the media. That's an irrelevant question.
No,
they have everything they need.
What? I'm sorry. What? Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, was just asked on CBS News, Face the Nation.
This morning, I spoke with Vice President J.D. Vance. Mr. Vice President, thank you for joining us. The big question, is the United States now at war with Iran?
No, we're not at war with Iran, John. We're at war with Iran's nuclear program, and I think the president...
The nuclear program is a red herring. It's a red herring.
...took decisive action to destroy that program last night. If I could step back a little bit, we have to give an incredible amount of gratitude to the troops who did...
If it's a red herring, why were the strikes only to nuclear sites? Why were the strikes on nuclear sites to begin with if there was a denuclearization negotiation taking place? Why was there a time period when there were no new centrifuges being developed? And then Donald Trump came in and cast aside that previous diplomatic effort. That's just a casus belli. It's basically WMDs, okay? Just as fake as WMDs.
An amazing thing last night. Think about this, John. They flew thousands of miles away, a 30-hour nonstop flight. They never touched down on the ground, and they dropped a 30,000-pound bomb on a target about the size of a washing machine. No military in the world has the training, the skills, and the equipment to do what these guys did last night.
Yeah, about like, what, 120,000 health cares? That's what it cost. This military campaign. Every time Iran has attempted negotiations during this process, they have been deceived and the opportunity has been taken for brazen military action by the West. I don't know how people can still be talking about Iran coming back to the negotiating table. You blew it up. Look at what happened only a few days ago when Iran decided to negotiate with Europe. Iran's foreign minister feels positive, but then the French rep goes on CNN and says that he agrees that there should be zero enrichment for Iran. Actually, the U.S. strikes happen only a couple days later.
I know the president and I are both very proud of them, and I think what they did was accomplish a very core American national objective. Iran cannot have a nuclear weapons program. The president's been very clear about this, and thanks to the bravery and competence and skill of our great pilots and everybody who supported this mission, we took a major step forward for that national objective last night.
It certainly was a complex and overwhelming mission.
Yeah, see, you hide yourself, you drape yourself in the flag, you hide behind our brave soldiers and our military might, and then that's how you effectively dismantle any sort of counter, because no one in mainstream media is going to sit there and be like, how do you think this advances America's interest? There was a negotiation that was taking place. Iran was very responsive to said negotiations, and you used the negotiations in a way to let our rabid attack dog that's doing genocide in Gaza go and strike Iran directly, and then you ended up joining the fight while there were more talks about diplomacy. How can anybody ever again trust America and its word? Ever again? We struck nuclear sites, man. We struck nuclear facilities. This is like, how do we not understand this is an incredibly dangerous precedent? We did this after spending years and years talking about how scary it is that Russia is doing so in Ukraine.
125 aircraft involved, we are told. Can you say definitively that Iran's nuclear program has now been destroyed?
Well, John, I don't want to get into the sensitive intelligence here, but we know that we set the Iranian nuclear...
Yeah, they didn't. This is the way to basically admit that they did not, by the way. That's the other side of the story. And just watch this space. They're going to say they didn't in a little bit when they justify striking Iran again. Just so you understand. They're going to say, oh, well, this was a good first strike, but more strikes are necessary. First, Israel will say this. They've probably already started saying this. They're going to say, oh, the impact was very limited, and also they had moved the enriched uranium to other facilities, and our intelligence is working tirelessly to figure out where those facilities are. Could be under a mosque, could be under a school, who knows? And then Iran will strike. Iran will continue striking, and then they will demand, they found another deep underground base, actually. There's special intelligence. America has to come back again. America has to fight again. That is, if Iran doesn't, in the interim, Iran doesn't immediately strike American bases, which will pull America into the conflict as though they haven't been pulled into it already. Iran themselves said it. I know, but Iran said that literally a week prior to the American bombing campaign. America knew that Iran had already moved the enriched uranium, and yet they struck Fordow anyway. I think the real reason why America struck Fordow and the other nuclear facilities directly was so that they would shift Iran's attention away to American assets in the region and away from bombing Tel Aviv. Because I think that Israel's air defenses have diminished. They have been exhausted. So every day that Iran spends striking Israel instead of striking American assets is a day where the appetite for more violence and bloodshed from Israeli society overall, once they finally experience repercussions, goes away. It's another day where the Israeli economy is at a halt. You keep thinking Iran is lying, but they are puppy. That's not what I'm saying. You realize America has more of those MOPs. America could kill Khamenei yesterday, and so could Israel. Why have they not done so far? I think they inevitably will, but the reason why they haven't done so thus far is because there's still a calculation being made here as far as what the Iranian society appetite is for furthering or for revenge. Because if they were to strike the most diplomatic, centralized form of power that they have, that they could easily kill, they do not know who comes next or what Iranian society looks like after this. America and Israel's goals in the region ultimately are either a puppet state of their design that can maintain some semblance of stability, which will be very difficult because Iranians have no appetite for further destabilization efforts from the West, especially considering that the Islamic Republic was a direct reaction to the initial destabilization that the West brought about. Okay, so that'll be incredibly brutal, far more brutal than the Islamic Republic, which is crazy to imagine. Okay, and it's not that. I mean, you can just point to the previous Shah regime to understand exactly how angry and resentful Iranian society got due to the Shah's ruthless autocracy and its ruthless policies. Or if they can't implement a puppet state or maintain a puppet state in Iran, they'll most likely try to turn it into a fail state.
Nuclear program back substantially last night. Whether it's years or beyond that, we know it's going to be a very long time before Iran can even build a nuclear weapon if they want to. But I actually think that raises the most important question. The president talked about this last night. We want Iran to give up their nuclear weapons program peacefully, but there is no way that the United States is going to let Iran have a nuclear weapon. And so they really have to choose a pathway, John. Are they going to go down the path of continued war, of funding terrorism, of seeking a nuclear weapon? Or are they going to work with us to give up nuclear weapons permanently? If they're willing to choose the smart path, they're certainly going to find a willing partner in the United States to dismantle that nuclear weapons program. But if they decide they're going to attack
a fail state, what is that? Something that resembles either Syria or Libya.
Troops, if they decide they're going to continue to try to build a nuclear weapon, then we are going to respond to that with overwhelming force. So really what happens next is up to the Iranians.
So let me drill down on what was accomplished. There's a report this morning in the New York Times that Fordow, that deep underground enrichment facility, was severely damaged but not fully destroyed. But the president said last night the enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated. Can we say that definitively, or are we just not sure yet? I mean, have those facilities been obliterated?
Well, John, severely damaged versus obliterated, I'm not exactly sure what the difference is. What we know is that their nuclear program back substantially. And again, John, I don't want to get into very sensitive intelligence about what we know, but I feel extremely confident, and I can say to the American people with great confidence that they are much further away from a nuclear program today than they were 24 hours ago. That was the objective of the mission, to destroy that Fordo nuclear site and, of course, do some damage to the other sites as well. But we feel very confident that the Fordo nuclear site was substantially set back, and that was our goal.
The UN's atomic energy watchdog said that Iran had 900 pounds of highly enriched uranium. Do we know what has become of that? Was it destroyed in this attack? Do we know? That's a big stockpile.
We're going to work in the coming weeks. Yeah, John, we're going to work in the coming weeks to ensure that we do something with that fuel. And that's one of the things that we're going to have conversations with the Iranians about. But what we know, John, is they no longer have the capacity to turn that stockpile of highly enriched uranium to weapons-grade uranium. And that was really the goal here. Uranium is not that difficult to come by, John, but enriching uranium up to the point of a nuclear weapon, that is what the president put a stop to last night.
There is no functional way to stop any sort of nuclear program outside of real hardline commitments to peace and negotiations. Barack Obama and Donald Trump basically proved this, okay? In the absence of that, if the goal is to stop the nuclear program, then your goal isn't the nuclear program at all. Your goal is destabilization. The nuclear program, which doesn't even exist really, like they don't have nukes. It's a lie. It's like saying Iraq has WMDs. It's the same. You're not going to be able to do that with a limited air campaign either. The only way you can do that with boots on the ground military warfare, which good luck at that point. If you thought the Iraq war was bad, holy you are unhinged. What? Hassan, this is the same chatter from before. He's just arguing in chat and not listening to what you're saying. Iran is 1v6. They do not have superpower. They are weak and don't have any support. Iran is not Superman. Iran will not go Super Saiyan. What are you talking? No one is saying this. No one is saying this. Okay? Remember what these guys said about... Remember what everybody said about Yemen? Oh, dude, Yemen is going to learn today about what it means. Yemen is going to learn today about what it means that Americans don't have health care. Who learned? Who learned that lesson? Did Yemen learn that lesson, or did we learn that lesson? That's not how war is waged, chatter. If that's how war was waged, about the superior military, and it wasn't about like logistics, and if it wasn't about attrition, then Yemen would have stopped bombing Israel. They have not. They came to the table, and America literally secured a ceasefire with American naval vessels only. Why did they do that? Because they kept bombing Sanaa. They kept bombing different parts of Yemen. They killed a ton of civilians, and Yemen did not let down even a little bit. Stop using stupid ass fucking faillennial references to talk about.
This morning, the Russian reaction caught my eye. Dmitry Medvedev,
yes, my dad
of course, the former president, prime minister of Russia, now the deputy chairman of Russia's Security Council, said the enrichment of nuclear material, and now we can say it outright, the future production of nuclear weapons will continue. A number of countries are ready to...
By the way, we'll say it outright now is most likely a mistranslation. Also, once again, Medvedev is not... Medvedev is a fabulist, okay? With the things that he said about Ukraine, everybody obviously dunked on him when he was saying that, unless it was, good enough to do propaganda. But as far as like nuclear weapons will continue, the production of nuclear weapons will continue. I think what they are trying to say in this circumstance, if we are to take this seriously, if he is truly even representative of the Russian position, which I don't think it is. I think it's an exaggeration of the Russian position. They're saying that they are going to pull out of the denuclearization, the NPT.
Directly supply Iran with their own nuclear warheads. What do you make of that Russian response? And are they off base? I mean, they're saying that the nuclear program in Iran is still well underway.
Well, first of all, I think it's a bizarre response, but I also don't know that that guy speaks for President Putin or for the Russian government. One of the things that we've picked up, John, in our conversations with the Russians over the last few months, despite our many disagreements, of course, with the state of Russia. They've been very consistent that they don't want Iran to get a nuclear weapon. And this is what I think many commentators underappreciate about what the president did last night. Iran having a nuclear weapon, nuclear proliferation in the Middle East is a disaster for pretty much everybody. It's one of the few issues where Russia, China, and the United States have broad agreement is that we don't want to see a nuclear arms race in the Middle East. So what the president did was very important. I'll let President Putin speak to what the official Russian position on this is, but I feel very confident that both for Russia, for China, and most importantly, of course, for us, we don't want Iran to have a nuclear weapon, and I think that goal is going to continue to animate American policy for the next few years.
President Trump last night also threatened additional military action if Iran retaliates or if peace does not come quickly. How quickly are we talking about? Are we talking about days? Are we talking about weeks?
Well, look, John, I'll let the president make those determinations, actually, but we're now going to have a serious conversation about how to get rid of Iran's nuclear weapons program permanently, meaning they have to choose not to have a nuclear weapons program and they have to give this thing up. Now, if you go back a little bit, John, what we have said consistently and repeatedly is they cannot have a nuclear weapon. We accomplished the goal of putting them back substantially last night, but there are two big things that the Iranians are going to have to choose from here. Number one, do they attack American troops in the region? If they do, as the president said, you're going to see overwhelming force from the Americans. If they continue to pursue a nuclear weapon, you're also going to see overwhelming force from the American people. So we've got really the ball in Iran's court here. If they make smart decisions, I think they're going to find us willing to work with them. If they continue to support terrorism, nuclear...
work with them, just like we have so far, you know? Work with them as we have done so far. What more do you want? we want to work with them, dude. You know? Come back to the negotiation table one more time so we can slap you in the face one more time as we slowly but surely keep playing the song and dance until your entire sovereignty is diminished, knowing full well that you won't even retaliate one bit in the process. Come on, man. Come on. You said thank you, Iran? Iran, have you said thank you? Hasanabi doctrine for state building is the most important material for all states. For Hasanabi doctrine for state sovereignty is the most important theory of the 21st century. It remains the absolute law of the land.
Weapons programs, then they're going to find overwhelming American force from the American military. That is really the choice before the Iranians, and that's a choice only they can make.
So what retaliation are you expecting? I mean, I know what you're hoping for, but they have vowed retaliation. What are you prepared for? What are you expecting from the Iranians?
Well, it's always hard to guess what the other side is going to do, but what we're prepared for is if they attack us in a maximal direction, first of all, we have got maximum defensive posture. I think that we're going to be able to defend as many of our people as possible. And of course, I'd encourage Americans to pray for our guys in the Middle East because, yes, they are under a significant amount of duress and a significant amount of threat right now. But then, of course, John, if the Iranians attack us, they're going to be met with overwhelming force. And I don't think the president could be clear about this. If you look at...
Wait, what changed? Because they weren't like, I don't know, a week prior. Why are they under significant duress now? I wonder if that has something to do with, I don't know, the decisions made by your administration. I'm so confused. Our little guys, they are just kind of standing there. Our military is small bean. Our innocent military, small bean in the region. It's worthwhile. Listen, it's worthwhile so that we can continue Israel's ambitions of utter dominance in the region. Sorry. Yeah, sure, a couple Americans might die in the process, but that's a risk that we are all willing to entertain. Just pray for them, though. Thoughts and prayers for the American military, for our small bean military in the region.
What we did yesterday, John, we did not attack the nation of Iran. We did not attack any civilian targets. We didn't.
You did. You literally did. Why are you on this Sunday program? Because you are explaining why you struck Iran.
Didn't even attack military targets outside of the 3 nuclear weapons facilities that we thought were important to accomplish our goal of preventing Iran from having a nuclear weapon. So how Iran responds, I think, is ultimately the ball is in their court. But if you look at what we did, it was very precise, very narrowly tailored to our objective. And if the Iranians decide to expand this, then that's ultimately their decision, and the President of the United States will respond in kind.
So you're raising the real possibility that this is not the end of this conflict, but the beginning of this conflict. You know, U.S. response to Iranian retaliation. There's one thing the president has been really consistent about throughout his entire life in politics, and that is the idea of no more wars. Let me play you what he said on election night and, of course, at his inauguration.
I'm not going to start a war. I'm going to stop wars. We will measure our success not only by the battles we win, but also by the wars that
remember they did the peace ticket. They were like, we're the peace ticket.
We end, and perhaps most importantly, the wars we never get into.
So let me ask you, what do you say to those, including some of the president's strongest supporters, who are really worried this morning that the United States is now involved in yet another protracted war, conflict, whatever you want to call it, in the Middle East?
Well, first of all, John, I think the president has been very clear that we are not interested in protracted conflicts in the Middle East, but there's a question about how do you achieve peace, and we believe the way that you achieve peace is through strength. We took a very narrow and limited approach to destroying the Iranian nuclear program, John. That's what the president did, and I think that, more than anything, is going to ensure peaceful resolution in that region of the world. You can't be weak. You can't sit there and allow the Iranians to achieve a nuclear weapon, John, and expect that's going to lead to peace. It would lead to absolutely disastrous military conflict all over the Middle East. We don't want that. Our Gulf Arab nation allies don't want that. Israel doesn't want that. And it's one of the few issues, frankly, that unites the Arabians to the Israelis is none of them want the Iranians to get a nuclear weapon because they know that it would lead to the opposite of peace. And so I'd say to people who are worried about a protracted military conflict is, number one, the president, more than anybody, is worried about protracted military conflicts. That is not what we're getting ourselves involved in. What we're getting ourselves involved in is a very targeted effort to eliminate the Iranian nuclear program. That will continue to be the goal of American foreign policy, and it's that goal that is going to motivate our action in the weeks and months to come.
But this was, as we discussed, a complex and overwhelming military action last night, and the president is vowing something bigger if the Iranians respond by retaliating. He's also raised the specter of targeting the supreme leader himself. As you know, earlier in the week, he said he knew where the Ayatollah is hiding and that he would be an easy target. Has the U.S. ruled out targeting the supreme leader in Iran? Has the U.S. ruled out trying to achieve regime change?
Well, first of all, we don't want to achieve regime change. We want to achieve the end of the Iranian nuclear program, John. That's America's objective, and that's what the president has set us out to do. The president, in the very tweet you mentioned, or the truth that you mentioned, John, said explicitly that he's not trying to take out the Iranian supreme leader. He's trying to take out their nuclear program. And, of course, we took a major step forward with that last night. And again, John, I think we have to back up and test some premises here. How do you achieve long-term peace? How do you prevent spiraling Middle Eastern conflict? Is it through overwhelming military power targeted to an American objective? Or is it by sort of walking yourself into these long-term protracted military conflicts? I think by choosing overwhelming force, and overwhelming force tied to something that is important to the American people, that is the end of the Iranian nuclear program, we can achieve peace much more fully than if we sort of sit on our hands and hope that somehow if the Iranians get a nuclear weapon, they're going to be more peaceful. That is a stupid approach, and the president rejected it.
All right, Vice President J.D. Vance, thank you for joining us this morning.
Thanks, John. Take care.
Following the U.S. bombing of 3 nuclear sites in Iran yesterday, Trump administration officials are breathing a sigh of relief that the highly classified bombing mission appears to have gone off without a hitch. But there is also concern now about what happens next when it comes.
Well, I'm telling you right now, this is ridiculous. Everything that they said about the initial success, they're going to walk back quietly. Or not quietly. They're just going to casually walk back as they talk about the necessity for further strikes. That is, if Iran doesn't even retaliate against American troop positions in the region. Athletes don't wear their own merch. That's funny. I mean, they do when they're literally performing, no? They're going to be like, oh, Israel has to keep striking Iran because, you know, we found new sites. We found new sites where they have moved their enriched nuclear uranium to. Oh, make no mistake. We don't want regime change. This is just for the nuclear weapons that they definitely have now. I don't know if you watched it, but his NBC interview was even better. He straight up said back in the Iraq days, we had dumb presidents and now we don't. Yeah, I love that. One of the funniest parts about this is JD Vance is also still trying to signal that he's like anti-escalation. I think that's an interesting space to watch as well. You might see a little bit of like, oh, well, you know, I stand by my president unconditionally, but like, you know, we have differences in opinion. I already saw the first makings of this with some leaks, in air quotes, from the internal disagreements about striking Iran. Here's NBC Meet the Press.
With Americans who are exhausted after 25 years of foreign entanglements in the Middle East. I understand the concern, but the difference is that back then we had dumb presidents, and now we have a president who actually knows how to accomplish America's national security objectives. So this is not going to be some long drawn-out thing. We've got in, we've done the job of setting their nuclear program back. We're going to now work to permanently dismantle that nuclear program over the coming years, and that is what the president has set out to do. Simple principle. Iran can't have a nuclear weapon. That has animated American policy over the past 130 days. It's going to continue to be a driving force of our policy in the Middle East for the next 3.5 years. I certainly...
Yeah, thank God for our brilliant leadership now.
Secretary of State and acting White House National Security Advisor Marco Rubio now joins us. Mr. Secretary, I know it has been an intense few hours, but so far it does not appear that Iran has yet retaliated against the United States. What intelligence do you have at this point about their capabilities to respond, the intent of their proxies? Is there any kind of command and control structure left to activate them?
Yeah, well, we'll see what Iran decides to do. I think they should choose the route of peace. We've done everything. We have bent over backwards, okay, to create a deal with these people. Steve Witkoff has traveled the world extensively, met with them. Well, not even met with them, met through the Omanis with them and discussed back and forth. We even put an offer to them that they wanted elements of it in writing, and we offered it to them. Very generous offer, by the way. We've done it, and we're prepared right now. If they call right now and say, we want to meet, let's talk about this, we're prepared to do that. The president's made that clear from the very beginning. His preference is to deal with this issue diplomatically. But he also told them we had 60 days to make progress or something else was going to happen.
This kind of stuff is so funny. I do wonder if your parents believe this. Chatters, do your liberal parents actually believe this? Because this is liberal media, right? And they're not antagonistic to this talking point at all. You rarely ever hear liberal media turn around and say, what do you mean you want to deal with them diplomatically? I'm getting a lot of yeses and a lot of nos. Like even ones that hate the administration. I wonder if this works on them. They're like, oh, well, you know, Iran can't have a nuclear weapon. This is terrifying.
And I think they thought they were dealing with a different kind of leader, like the kinds of leaders they've been playing games with for the last 30 or 40 years, and they found out that's not the case. So this mission was a very precise mission. It had 3 objectives, 3 nuclear sites. It was not an attack on Iran. It was not an attack on the Iranian people. This wasn't a regime change move. This was designed to degrade and or destroy 3 nuclear sites related to their nuclear weaponization ambitions, and that was delivered on yesterday. What happens next will now depend on what Iran chooses to do next. If they choose the path of diplomacy, we're ready. We can do a deal that's good for them, the Iranian people, and good for the world. Yeah. If they choose another route, then there'll be consequences for that.
Let me follow up on a phrase you just word, weaponization ambitions. Are you saying there that the United States did not see intelligence that the Supreme Leader had ordered weaponization?
That's irrelevant. I see that question being asked in the media. That's an irrelevant question.
No,
they have everything they need.
What? I'm sorry. What? Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, was just asked on CBS News, Face the Nation, do you have intelligence that actually shows that there was some sort of nuclear ambition, which is the primary reason, right? I thought that was the most significant aspect of this.
Are you saying that, follow up on a phrase?
If they choose another route, then there'll be consequences for that.
Let me follow up on a phrase you just word, weaponization ambitions. Are you saying there that the United States did not see intelligence that the Supreme Leader had ordered weaponization?
That's irrelevant. I see that question being asked in the media. That's an irrelevant question.
No,
they have
that
everything
is
they
the
need
key
to build a
point
weapon.
in U.S. intelligence assessments. You know that.
No, it's not.
Yes, it was.
No, it's
that
not.
the political decision
I know,
had not been made.
I know that better than you know that, and I know that that's not the case.
But I'm asking you whether the order was given.
And the people who say that, it doesn't matter if the order was given. They have everything they need to build nuclear weapons. Why would you bury things in a mountain, 300 feet under the ground?
Right.
Why would you bury why do they have 60% enriched?
Oh my God. Oh my God. He just straight up confirmed that there wasn't any new information. I mean, we knew that already, but it's crazy that he just confirmed it. As the mother Secretary of State, hold on. I do want to hear from Fox News with the regime change meta.
We don't want a regime change. We do not want to protract this.
The White House not responding to reports that Iran's supreme leader named 3 candidates to succeed him should he be killed, or if that should be viewed as an indication Iran is moving toward retaliation. Today, this from Iran's foreign minister.
I think it is irrelevant to ask Iran to return to diplomacy. We were in diplomacy, but we were attacked.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio says Iranian negotiators went dark as the U.S. presented offers for a civilian nuclear energy program with enrichment outside Iran.
They rejected it. They played us. They tried to play us, I should say. They wouldn't respond to our offers. They disappeared for 10 days.
The vice president said President Trump realized by mid-May negotiations were going nowhere, then issued private ultimatums and greenlit the operation after this.
The Iranians stopped negotiating in good faith. That was the real catalyst.
Now the White House waits for a response. The Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps says Washington...
Bro, notice how they don't say the Iranians stopped negotiating? Because that's a lie. So they say the Iranians stopped negotiating in good faith. Like, we didn't like the negotiations. Also, saying that while you have just executed a strike on Iran is insane. And yes, Richard Medhurst is correct here. She looks like she's challenging Rubio, but it's propaganda with the illusion of journalism. When Rubio says, why does Iran have 60% enriched uranium? The correct and factual answer is, and this is a partisan answer, if you are a liberal, by the way, is because the U.S. walked away from the JCPOA. But you'll never hear that on mainstream media, which is shocking because that was literally Barack Obama's signature foreign policy accomplishment. If the Democrats actually had any investment in winning and being an anti-war party, being an anti-interventionist party, when we know there's a lot of popular sentiment for this position, they would just say, this is one of Barack Obama's incredible accomplishments. We love Barack Obama. And they never let him down. Or they never let him live it down. All of the European leaders that were yelling at Donald Trump to stay in the JCPOA at the time are now fantasizing about how awesome it was and talking about how dope it was that they did a strike on Iran.
Uranium. You don't need 60% enriched uranium. The only countries in the world that have uranium at 60% are countries that have nuclear weapons. Because they can quickly make it 90. They have all the elements. They have. Why do they have a space program? Is Iran going to go to the moon? No, they're trying to build an ICBM.
No, but
so
that's a question. That's a question.
It.
That's a question of intent. And you know, in the intelligence assessment, that it was that Iran wanted to be a threshold state and use this leverage.
Says?
I'm talking about the public March
says?
assessment, and that's
also okay. Richard Medhurst is wrong. She's right. She actually did push back on the 60% assessment. No, she's right. Never mind. I actually should give her a little bit more credit. In talking about the JCPOA would be the smart thing to do here, but she's not wrong. The reason why Iran is at a nuclear has become a nuclear threshold state is because it gives them an upper hand in the negotiations to allow maintaining their civilian nuclear infrastructure, and they have every right to do so because America pulled out of it and then applied a comprehensive sanctions package on Iran.
That's why I was asking you if you know something more from
but
March.
That's also
if
an
order
inaccurate
was
representation of it. That's an accurate representation of it. That's not how intelligence is read. That's not how intelligence is used. Here's what the whole world knows. Forget about intelligence. What the IAEA knows. They are enriched.
Dog, you are the Secretary of State. What do you mean forget about the intelligence? That's your intelligence. What do you mean forget about the intelligence? You're not like a random guy on the street. You're the intelligence.
Enriching uranium well beyond anything you need for a civil nuclear program. So why would you enrich uranium at 60%?
Right.
If you don't intend to one day use it to take it to 90 and build a weapon?
Right.
Why?
Oh, she says right. Okay, this is where she falls apart. Because at first she pushes back correctly, where she's like, they have enriched uranium to 60% with no intention by your own intelligence assessments, your own intelligence community's assessments, no interest in reaching beyond the nuclear threshold and becoming a state armed with nuclear warheads, to a detriment, mind you. That's my assessment, at least, clearly, to a detriment.
Why are you developing ICBMs? Why do you have 8,000 short-range missiles and 2,000 to 3,000 long?
I don't know. Why are your bases surrounding this goddamn state? Perhaps that's the reason. Why does America have short-range ballistic missiles and long-range ballistic missiles and intercontinental ballistic missiles and submarines that have nuclear launch capabilities? Why would anybody do that? I don't know. Maybe because they don't want to be Lebanon, dumbass.
Range missiles that you continue to develop. Why do you do all these things? They
Understood.
have everything they need for a nuclear weapon. They have the delivery mechanisms. They have the enrichment capability. They have the highly enriched uranium that is stored.
Yes.
That's all we need to see.
Right. Well, and
especially
that's,
in the hands of a regime that's already involved in terrorism and proxies and all kinds of things around. They are the source of all instability
and no one's
in the
disputing.
Middle East.
No one's disputing.
They're just bad. They're big bad. They're the big bad. Please, please. It's like Marvel. It's like Top Gun. What is this scrutiny? God, you're so annoying. They're just bad, okay? Trust me. One of the funniest parts about this back and forth is that everything we say about Iran is more applicable to Israel. Like, everything we fantasize about Iran is literally Israel now. What does Mossad have on Marco? Nothing. Don't believe, even for a moment. I hate when people do this. Do not entertain the notion that Marco Rubio had to get blackmailed by Mossad to arrive at this position. He is the Secretary of State for the United States of America. He has been a war hawk for his entire career, to the extent that Marco and Trump and all these other people allow Israel to be the tip of the spear, okay, the tail wagging the dog, if you will, is not due to some kind of like pedophilic blackmail operation, but is entirely the consequence of their own true belief that these guys actually know what they're doing, perhaps even better than we do. And the naysayers, as far as they exist, get squashed and stamped out pretty quickly by this foreign entities, intelligence communities, and sophisticated propaganda networks. The example I used already was the Central Command guy that they clapped as recently as last week for saying the correct thing about Israel, for saying the truth about Israel, that it's like a death cult that demands way more from America than we should be giving them. There does not need to be like this blackmailing operation. Americans are violent all on their own. Do you know how Trump decided to attack the weekend to buffer the inevitable stock market dip on Monday? Do you think Iran is holding off on their retaliation until tomorrow to maximize the stock market crash? Maybe.
I'm not doing that here. And they were censured at the IA.
The idea that these guys are all actually blackmailed by like a cabal. They were blackmailed by the Jewish cabal, Mossad, whatever the call it, depending on how insane you are, to arrive at these positions is really stupid. Okay? It's just copium. You recognize that this is like unacceptable, and you still believe in your heart that America is like, America is good, right? America's good and our leadership is good. And they want to do their very best to do right by the American citizens. They don't give a as long as their rich benefactors keep making money. That's all they're going to do. You think every single General McStick that went on national TV yesterday and had a very hard time hiding their, when they were rock hard, nipples so hard they get cut through diamonds, salivating at the prospect of striking Iran again and again? Do you think that those guys were all that horny because now they know their sex tapes are never going to be released? No, they just love death and destruction. They think about all the money that they're going to be making for the companies that they now lobby for, and many of them are also white supremacist psychopaths.
IAEA for that enrichment and for violating their non.
How do you explain 4 different Western countries regurgitating the same tweet? Easy. They're dogs to America. What do you mean? They're dogs to America, and they already get their talking points from pro-Israel groups anyway. They either get their talking points from pro-Israel groups or they get their talking points from America, which is the largest pro-Israel group on the planet. Yeah. This is their ultimate ambition. These guys do not operate outside of the confines of whatever America wants to do. Our interests align with Israelis. Our interests align with Israel's. Like, Israel is our weapon to wield in the region. The problem here is that because of its special client state status, Israel has chewed way more than it can swallow for far too long. And I think because America recognizes that it is at the precipice of losing its hegemonic status. I mean, look at what they're doing. They can't even dominate Russia. They want to pack up the region with one big Hail Mary campaign. How do you explain AIPAC's involvement if there isn't a slight cabal, which is not Jewish, but Israel? It's not even, dude, what you're just trying to say it's a cabal when what you mean is the Israel lobby. That's not a cabal. They're not doing it secretly. There is no blood rituals happening. They're just doing it in broad daylight. Why is it that every American has to find like a fantastical conspiracy when things are unfolding, like conspiracies, not conspiracy theories, but conspiracies in the actual term of it, to conspire, is happening in broad daylight in front of you? It's so weird that people are just like, oh, dude, it's just like, seems like there's got to be like some kind of shadow government. It's like, it's not a shadow. It's just the government. Okay. That's why I keep saying, I think completely disregarding the blackmail is not realistic. There must be blackmail and corruption element. No, it's corruption. It's not blackmail. Does blackmail exist? Absolutely. For the record, that's not what I'm saying at all.
On proliferation agreements, I was simply asking if we had intelligence that there was an order to weaponize, because you said weaponization ambitions.
Well, we haven't.
Like, look, Trigaro, here, I'm going to try and allow this statement so that I can respond to it. He says, nah, I understand you not trying to be anti-Jewish, but stating simple facts isn't. Zionist Jews have coerced this country to heal through blackmail and bribery. This is the only part of this. I mean, there's multiple part of this that's wrong. Okay. I'm not saying this because I'm afraid of coming across as anti-Semitic. I'm saying what I'm saying because that is the truth. Okay. This is not the truth. That's it. The idea that it's actually a Jewish invention, the idea that this is like simply the product of Jews and their trickery, is not only anti-Semitic, but also, outside of being bigoted, is just wrong. Like, at its most simple, at its most basic, it's just wrong. Biden is not Jewish. It's not because Biden was blackmailed by Mossad or something that he was unimaginably pro-Israel for the entirety of his career. It is because he is an evangelical, but a Catholic Zionist, okay? Even a more unique position. This country has of evangelical Zionists. Thomas Massey interview, they have handlers for most politicians. Of course they do, just like the NRA does. Israel does not have to coerce America and Americans, or Israel has to coerce Americans, certainly, but Israel does not have to coerce American politicians, the American government, to get $300 billion of military and economic aid for the past 80 years, okay? They don't have to coerce anybody to do that. That's a given already. The coercion comes and the influence peddling comes at the point of continuing this allegiance that is basically outsourced to Israel to manufacture consent for. Do you understand? This benefits America's foreign policy goals. But because it has gotten so out of control and the influence was so pervasive that in a moment like this, where every American, especially due to social media, has seen exactly what Israel is doing in Gaza, has seen what Israel's been doing in Lebanon, the old ways of stamping out dissent no longer work. Part of that is because it's not America's war. If this was another 9/11 style situation, like October 7 happening to Israel as opposed to happening to America, is part of the reason why most Americans are like, okay, I mean, that's pretty crazy. These guys are savages, sure. But like what Israel has done since then is like way more savage. That's the average American position. This didn't happen to America. It happened to Israel. Most Americans still understand Israel as a totally separate foreign country. Part of that is because of the steady propaganda that Israel is a foreign country with autonomy. I think these chatters that are questioning you either don't know or have forgotten the tangible benefits like foreign policy goals, an umbrella term. Yeah, also, here's another thing. Okay? As far as like the influence peddling and even censorship regime that Israel implements in America, that is allowed by the American state, going so far as to have pro-Israel groups that can masquerade in Western society as advocacy groups for Jews, right? This is a lie, of course. The ADL does not care about Jews, and it doesn't care about anti-Semitism at all. It's simply using anti-Semitism as a cudgel, as a weapon to wield against those who dare criticize Israel. But there's a reason why people are still afraid, especially careerists are still afraid, to come out and speak the truth, even if they feel it. And it's not because of blackmail. It is because of the unimaginable metric ton of shit they throw your way.
Intelligence that they have everything they need to build a nuclear weapon, and that's more than enough.
Okay. I want to ask you on the policy front. There are personnel throughout the Middle East from the United States, in Bahrain, in Kuwait, and other bases. If those countries are attacked by Iran because of their association with the United States, will the United States defend them?
Well, that's exactly why they're there. That's a great point, actually. Do you know why we have bases in Bahrain and Qatar and UAE and all these places? All of those bases are there because those countries are afraid that Iran will attack them. If Iran was not a threat to the region, if the Iranian regime, because I'm talking about the Iranian people, the regime was not a threat to the region, we wouldn't have to have any of these bases. Those bases are there because those countries are petrified that the Iranian Shia clerics that run that country will attack their countries.
Will the United States defend them if they are?
As you know, they've got a very difficult history. Well, that's why we're there. That's why we're there.
So
but
yes, we will defend them.
Is what they're threatening to do. So we'll defend our people, obviously. We'll defend our people. Well, they'll attack our bases, and those are our bases, and we're going to defend our personnel, and we're prepared to do that. But we'll do more than just defend. We'll impose costs on Iran if they attack American personnel, whether they do it directly or whether they do it through some of these proxies that they try to hide behind, and that includes the Houthis. Yeah. So another proxy of theirs. So, but let's hope they don't choose that route. Let's all hope that they actually decide, okay, let's go negotiate, because we want a diplomatic and peaceful solution. We have achieved our objectives. We're ready to negotiate this in a peaceful, diplomatic way. We've been prepared to do that for days. They are the ones that played games, as they have done for 40 years, as they have done to multiple presidents. They tried to play games with President Trump, and they see what happens. This is not a game-playing president. When he says he's going to do something, he will do it.
I hear you saying here you want to de-escalate when you are talking about diplomacy. You are looking for Iran to pick up that offer that was put on the table you mentioned by Steve Witkoff. Can you just clarify, does that mean the U.S. would still allow for Iran to have a civilian nuclear program if it does not enrich on its own soil?
But that's never been an issue. There's countries all over the world that have a civil nuclear program. No one here is saying that Iran can't. Sure, that's always been there. Any country in the world has a right to have a civil nuclear program. What they don't have a right to do is to enrich it at 60%, hide it under a mountain, and develop long-range and short-range and mid-range missiles and sponsor terrorist proxies all over the world. They don't have a right to do that. And that's what they've been doing. And no one's dealt with it. And it's continued to linger. And they've played games with multiple presidents and multiple countries around the world, and they've gotten away with it for 40-something years. This is very simple. The president wants to resolve this diplomatically and peacefully. He gave them a chance to do that. They delayed. They had all
this kind of gaslighting is so funny, dude. Like, oh, dude, countries all around the world have civil nuclear programs. Like, what do you mean? I just but we just don't want Iran to have one, you know? They do have a right to build missiles. Yeah, of course they have a right to build missiles. And also, America's steady intervention in the region is the reason why they spend so much on their missile defense. Have you analyzed the Epstein situation on stream? Are you kidding me? Oh my God. Have I? Oh, have I? Extensively. Back in the day. Old heads remember my YouTube channel almost got entirely blacklisted because I stupidly uploaded a 9-hour Jeffrey Epstein analysis stream in its entirety to my YouTube channel. And then the next video I uploaded after that got like 10 views. And I very quickly deleted the video. I have since then done more coverage on it. But literally the next day, the video that came after that was it had like 10 views. I couldn't believe it.
All these kind of delay tactics. They wouldn't even meet with us directly. We had to go through third countries. This is very simple. Let's meet directly. Let's work on agreements that are good for Iran, good for the Iranian people in particular, good for the safety and security of the world and the United States. That's always been our preference. That continues to be our preference. But they're the ones that were playing games with us. And these are the consequences. We had to achieve those objectives. We had 3 objectives yesterday: Fordow, Natanz, and Esfahan. We conducted a brilliant military operation under the command of President Trump, and obviously great credit to Secretary Hegseth and General Kurilla and General Kane and all the airmen and the phenomenal people in the U.S. military. No other military in the world could have done this.
No,
We've achieved those objectives. What happens next is up to the regime. Okay, the regime wants peace. We're ready for peace. They want to do something else. They're incredibly vulnerable. They can't even protect their own airspace.
Well, clearly they could not. But what is the U.S. assessment of how much nuclear material at those sites was moved prior to the attack? There has been talk for days about bombing of Fordow.
Well, look, we don't know.
At a certain point, we got to ask ourselves, why was this? What was the goal here then? Because if they... What was the goal here? If they move the enriched uranium away from Fordow, and if you're saying that they're allowed to have a civil nuclear program, and that they wanted to negotiate, and then you guys struck them amidst the negotiation, at a certain point, what's all this for? Therein lies the problem. It's for regime change.
No one will know for sure for days, but I doubt they moved it, because you really can't move anything right now, and they can't move anything right now inside of Iran. I mean, the minute a truck starts driving somewhere, the Israelis have seen it and they've targeted it and taken it out. So our assessment is we have to assume that that's a lot of 60% enriched uranium buried deep under the ground there in Esfahan, and that really is the key. What they should do with that is they should bring it out of the ground and turn it over. Multiple countries around the world will take it and downblend it. That's what they should do with that. And what they should do is say, we're not going to have any enrichment capability in our country. Instead, what we're going to have is a civil nuclear program like dozens of countries around the world have, where we build reactors that...
Dude, the needle is going to move away from the nuclear program. If they were to actually successfully take out the entirety of the nuclear program, which they didn't, so they're going to keep saying we have to bomb it more. Or if Iran said, okay, we will no longer have a nuclear program, then they're going to say you're funding proxy groups in the region and you have a missile system that is actually threatening our bases that you decided to have a country near. Okay. The ultimate goal is always going to be the same. There's always something else. That's it. They'll just move the goalpost to the next thing. This is not a real negotiation with a state that they want to allow to remain a state. Dude, you don't believe this? Iran sent a communique to Trump in the days before last night's attacks, threatening to activate sleeper cell terror. Iran sent a communique to Trump in the days before last night's strikes on it. Oh my God. The propaganda machine is going crazy.
Create electricity, and we import enriched material. And we've made very general, I'm not going to get all the details of the offers, but there are other avenues here that would be acceptable to them. If that's what they wanted, if what they want is a civil, peaceful...
I think a lot of young people at least are knowledgeable of 9/11 and the weapons of mass destruction lies to go to war with Iraq, but I don't think they're aware of like the anthrax summer campaigns. You know what I mean? Not the anthrax summer, but like anthrax campaigns.
Nuclear program, the route has always been there. The problem is that everything they're demanding has nothing to do with a peaceful program. They are all the things you would want if you want to retain the option of one day weaponizing the program.
Okay.
Which has been their clear intent. To me, that's indisputable. I followed this issue for 15 years, including the intelligence on it for 15 years. Okay, I have followed it. And the intelligence, these are assessments, and sometimes they've been wrong. I've seen them revised multiple times. These guys want a nuclear weapon one day.
Okay,
they do,
to that point.
and it isn't going to happen. Not while Donald Trump is president.
Understood. You've said this is not about regime change, but you were describing a regime that you have said for decades, I mean, for upwards of 40 years, has chanted death to America, has done all the things you just described. Isn't a diplomatic deal with them a lifeline?
Why does anybody care that he said, bro? I don't care.
Aren't you offering to negotiate with the same people you're saying did all these things? So therefore, are you actually looking for regime change?
Well, that misses the point. I don't like that they chant those things, but one thing is that they chant those things. Another thing is that they...
Bibi says he has interesting information about the location of Iran's enriched uranium. You don't say. No. Please link this to me. Please. No shot. No shot. That came way, brother, that came way, way, way faster than I thought it would. Prime Minister Israel's interesting intel on whereabouts of Iran's 60% enriched uranium. Israel's interesting intel on the whereabouts of Iran's 400 kilograms of 60% enriched uranium. That's so shocking. The Iranian regime has its enriched uranium under tunnels, under hospitals, in the Ayatollah's swimming pool, in the Ayatollah's garage. It is under Iranian hospitals and in the cribs of Iranian babies of terror. Israel must do everything it can in its power to stop the terror regime. I have it on good authority that Zoran Mamdani also has the enriched uranium. You must not let Zoran Mamdani become the mayor of New York. If you do, you might find beepers in hospitals. You might find uranium under hospitals and also under kindergartens as well. This is not a threat, but a promise.
Chant those things, and they have terror proxies are all over the world, and they have long-range missiles that can reach the United States one day, and they have the potential to be one step away from a nuclear weapon. Yeah, well, one day could be tomorrow, could be a week from now, could be a month from now. You know, all it takes is the flip of a switch. By the way, they're not going to broadcast that to the world. By the time we figure out...
Iran didn't launch the war. My God, we are living in Orwellian times. Iran had it coming, according to The Atlantic. If the war launched by the rulers of Iran has brought only defeat and humiliation to their country, that does not make those rulers victims of anybody else's aggression. A failed aggressor is still the aggressor. Right move, wrong team by David Frum. It's very frustrating that these guys who very clearly represent the interests of Israel above anything else don't want to live there. I'm so goddamn annoyed. I'm so annoyed. Why do you live here? Go live there. If you want to live there, you can easily go and live there. As I've said time and time again, they love white people there. Anyway.
Welcome back.